In 1700, India accounted for roughly 27% of the global economy. By the time the British left in 1947, as Dr. Shashi Tharoor highlights, that share had plummeted to just 3%. This chart tracks an economic collapse without modern precedent. One of the richest regions on Earth was reduced to third-world poverty in the span of just 2 centuries. Before the British East India Company arrived, India was a thriving, highly globalized economy. They exported massive quantities of textiles, spices, and manufactured goods, running a trade surplus so large that European gold and silver constantly flowed into the subcontinent as payment. That stability fractured during the 18th century. As the centralized power of the Mughal Empire declined, the subcontinent broke apart into a complex web of competing regional states, disrupting long-distance trade and creating a deep political vacuum. At this pivot point, local powers like the Maratha Confederacy had the potential to unify and modernize the region on their own terms. Instead, their forces were defeated at the Battle of Vasai in 1803, removing the last major obstacle to British territorial control. The British didn't inherit a primitive land in need of modernization. They walked into a highly sophisticated, historically wealthy global power at its moment of greatest political vulnerability. To protect their own emerging industrial revolution, Britain implemented a strict protectionist playbook. They slapped massive tariffs on Indian textiles, effectively pricing Indian weavers out of the international market. This forced a total economic reversal. India was transitioned from a high-value exporter into a captive consumer market. Raw materials were siphoned out of the out-of-continent to feed British factories, and duty-free manufactured goods were flooded back in. In the late 19th century, the scholar Dadabhai Naoroji meticulously documented these mechanics, formulating the drain of wealth theory. One of the primary tools for this drain was a ledger item called home charges. The colonial government used Indian taxes to pay for the British Army, the pensions of British officials, and even imperial wars waged in other parts of the world. This document shows the literal accounting of that extraction. It tracks the annual British investment in goods like silk and saltpeter, showing a continuous year-over-year spike in wealth leaving the country. The bottom row reveals the scale, over £12 million extracted in this single accounting period. This was the very capital Indian merchants needed to build their own modern factories, but it was being relocated to London. Britain's rapid industrial growth was directly subsidized by the deliberate, engineered deindustrialization of India. A common defense of the empire is that it modernized India, with apologists often pointing to the construction of the vast railway network as a gift of progress. However, the design of these railways was purely extractive. They were laid down to accelerate the movement of raw materials from the interior to the ports, and to quickly deploy troops to crush local resistance. Similarly, the introduction of English education and Western institutions is often framed as a civilizing mission. In reality, the education policy was designed to mass-produce cheap, loyal, English-speaking clerks who could efficiently operate the lower levels of the colonial bureaucracy. These railways and schools functioned as the logistical backbone of a corporate takeover, built to move resources and personnel with maximum efficiency. The extraction eventually reached the food supply. Under the commercialization of agriculture, farmers were forced to stop growing food grains and instead cultivate cash crops like cotton and indigo to supply British industry. By prioritizing foreign export profits over domestic survival, the colonial administration destroyed the region's natural resilience. When droughts inevitably hit, the local population was left with nothing to fall back on. The ultimate human cost was staggering. An estimated 55 to 60 million Indians died in famines under British rule. The British Crown largely viewed these mass deaths with apathy, treating the famines as a convenient Malthusian necessity to keep the population in check. By 1947, the statistical reality was bleak. The average life expectancy was just 27 years, the literacy rate was below 17%, and the economic growth rate had flatlined at 0.001%. When independence finally arrived, the new nation was not starting from scratch. They were inheriting a looted, broken state, structurally designed for extraction rather than domestic growth. The colonial era functioned as a 200-year interruption, siphoning off the capital and the lives that would have otherwise built a modern, independent India.